You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Ken Reed here with another edition of TV Guidance Counselor. Very, very excited today. My guest is the one and only Mr. Steven Weber, actor extraordinaire. You probably maybe best know him from the show Wings, but he's done a ton of stuff as we talk about here. Very well known for doing a lot of the Stephen King miniseries and also doing the audiobooks, but an amazing guy, really funny. If you are not following Steven Weber on Twitter, you are doing Twitter wrong. Definitely follow him. I cannot thank him enough for sitting down and taking some time out of his incredibly busy schedule to talk to me about my nonsense. And he was very gracious and is just a quality human being. And I cannot thank him enough. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Steven Weber.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Steven Weber, how are you?
I'm very well, Ken. I'm very excited to do this.
I'm very excited to have you. It's this is probably the gloomiest day I've seen in LA, and it's still 1,000 times nicer than where I came from.
Now, come on. No, it's a little bit of gloom, but I mean, it was raining fairly heavily last week.
You've been out here a while.
I came out here in 1988 to do a play, and then the following year, from New York, that is, and then the following year I got Wings and was out here for the next 8 years, and then I just kind of stayed.
Do you ever miss? Like, do you feel like you have that East Coast? Because you grew up in Queens. I mean, you were. I mean, that's East Coast.
That's East Coast. Yeah. I do miss it. And I think once my kids are ensconced in college, I think I'm gonna get the hell out of here.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, it's great. The one problem has been the kind of perennial issue with Los Angeles is that you're driving all the time and you're isolated and you're in your car. And then one of the things that I miss about New York is the sense of community.
Yeah.
You know, at least, especially if you're an actor in the arts or something like that, you can walk down the street and always see somebody you know, at least in Manhattan.
Right.
You know?
Or even on the subway.
Yeah. And, and that, I miss that aspect of it. But what LA obviously does have is, more extensive beauty, I suppose, which is subjective, and the weather, of course, and it's great. And my kids were born out here, and I have friends, but I think I'm done.
Yeah,
I think I'm done with Los Angeles.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm still sort of. I don't think I came out until I turned 30, and it was mostly because people in Boston were like, "Well, it sucks out there," because everyone in Boston hates everything. And
well, like East Coast hates West Coast on principle.
Absolutely.
And I hated until finally I said, "What the hell am I hating this for?"
Yeah, you go out there and you're like, "Oh, it's actually pretty nice.
It's really nice."
Though this was the first thing, and this might say more about me, and I don't know if this is something you experienced as an East Coaster, especially New Yorker, but when the first time I came out here, I went, "Everyone's so nice. They have no defenses. We could conquer them.
We could wipe them out."
It just seemed like they were like,
That's right.
They wouldn't even fight back.
When I first came out here, I want to say 1988, and I went to a Gelson's market. And, in New York, back then at least, you had a variety of smaller supermarkets. Bodegas or, A&P or Waldbaum's or very kind of local, urban, iconic places. And the produce and the meats usually looked like they, were thrown out of the back seat of out of a moving vehicle.
Right.
Everything's bruised and brown. And that's cool. That's the way it is. It's in its natural state.
You're lucky it got here.
Yeah, that's right. And when I came out here and went to Gelson's or one of these other big markets, the produce was arranged like a gorgeous rainbow. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen, and I began to shiver.
Yeah.
I began to tremble at the possibilities that I've been living in a crap hole.
I've only seen in black and white.
I can't believe it.
Color.
Yeah, it was pretty unbelievable. And so there's that. And the fact that people are less uptight. And the funny thing is that when I go back to New York, and there are Whole Foods markets in New York and everything in New York, but that they have their own specific kind of New York attitude, but it's still Whole Foods. Yeah. And I have grown accustomed to saying hello and talking to cashiers and just being very open and communicative. it's still a tough.
People are suspicious.
What
do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? What do you want from me? Yeah, but I do miss. I grew up. Before I came out to LA, I lived in Long Island City. Before that became built up, and it was the safest, coolest neighborhood. It looked like it was out of Goodfellas.
Yeah,
everybody was named Tony or Mary. Tony, throw me down a beer. Mary, shut up. What? Tony, Mary.
Which one?
What are you doing? What? All day.
Tony B.
Tony, this is my friend Tony. That's Mary. That's Mary's son Tony, and that's Tony's son Mary.
And his father, Anthony.
His father, Anthony. Anthony, throw me down a beer.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
And then your family was in show business as well, right?
Oh, my father was an agent, and he handled comics and singers in the Borscht Belt and in nightclubs. And then his father also was a fairly well-known agent who managed, Gleason and Rickles in their early days, and it was a very interesting, I wouldn't say checkered, but I mean it was just kind of an odd backstage world that I grew up in. It was kind of Broadway Danny Rose, not nearly as shabby, but hovering dangerously close.
I mean, that's like what. There's two things I think of when I think of New York, and it's like that world, like that 1950s.
Oh yeah,
what's
cigarettes.
my line?
Yep.
That kind of world, and then the Warriors and Escape from New York. It's like one or the other.
That's right. We went through the first two, and then we're on to Escape from New York.
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
That's where we're headed.
I mean, there was sort of like an intellectual humorist kind of thing that I always get from like the 60s and into the 70s New York, like Dick Cavett.
That's right. Well, that was sort of, I feel like that, the 60s, or rather the 60s and 70s was the tail end of what was firmly established in the 50s in terms of the kind of art meets media dynamic. There was all this thriving theater and live TV and live soaps and the beginning of the real talk shows with, Steve Allen and Broadway Open House. And
the Tonight Show was there.
Tonight Show and all that stuff. And it was thriving, and the world that I was describing with the nightclubs and stuff, that was real too, and it was kind of great and beautiful. And then of course it began to wear off, and I don't know what the hell happened in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I mean I don't think anyone knows what happened in the 60s.
No one will ever know.
Everyone forgets.
Right.
But were you going to things like? Were you going to tapings? Were you seeing live shows? Like, did your dad ever drag you along to like one of his clients is going to be in a talk show?
Well, not talk show, but I did go to the Copacabana a couple of times.
Wow.
I did go to some other nightclubs. I was very young and saw, my father's, I guess his bread and butter act was a comedian named Pat Henry, who's been dead quite a while, but he opened for Sinatra for 10 years.
Wow.
So a few times I saw, chairman of the board and went backstage. Never met him, but I remember hearing him warming up in dressing rooms next door, whatever it was, and meeting all sorts of hilarious characters. So I was around it, and but mostly, I guess, since my interests were more theater oriented and acting oriented than performing. I went to shows early on. I saw the first, I guess, the original cast of Hair.
Wow.
This was in 1970, so it had already been running for a little while. But I saw that. I saw some other shows, but mostly I was steeped in television.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat in front of the TV too long. And in the 60s, especially in the 70s, but the 60s, much of local TV in New York was still a hangover from the 50s.
Yeah.
So I was watching, Ding Dong School.
Yep.
I mean, nobody knows what the hell that is. But these were all from the 50s.
Yeah.
And, I guess recent repeats of, I want to say, My Favorite Martian,
Right.
or,
My Mother
My
the
Little
Car.
Margie, My Mother the Car.
My Living Doll.
Everything had a my in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And grew up with that.
I mean, my favorite sitcom, New York sitcom, one of the last ones that was actually shot there before everything moved out here, is Car 54.
Well, Car 54, Joey Ross, Fred Gwynn.
It's so funny, and I revisit it all the time.
Do you
and
really?
It's so good. It's Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Wow.
It's so clear that Larry David watched that show. I don't know if he ever did.
That's hilarious.
But that like spiraling misunderstandings and good intentions leading to a really weird conclusion was like a Nat Heinken
Nat
standard.
Heineken. Well, also, didn't Nat Heineken do Phil Silvers as well?
Yeah, and The Love God with Don Knotts.
Oh my God! Now that's really obscure.
Such a great movie. Yeah.
Is it a great movie?
It really is. You could remake that today.
The Love God.
Not changing a word of the script, and it would seem modern.
We'll get on it, Ken.
I know. And hey, I've been screaming it all day here in Hollywood. No,
nobody's listening.
But the premise is that Don Knotts is a second generation editor of a bird magazine.
Right.
And this guy who runs a porno magazine loses his mailing license.
Mm-hmm.
But so if he buys another magazine that has a mailing license, he can send his stuff out. So he buys this bird magazine and makes it into like a Playboy type magazine called Birds, but tries to reinvent Don Knotts as a Hugh Hefner,
right,
as like the front man for this magazine. Right. And it's about, like, obviously it goes to his head and he becomes a real asshole. It's like, and it's so funny. And it's got these great New York character actors. But Car 54 is like that for me.
I got to revisit that.
Yeah,
Car
I would
54,
I would recommend.
Joey Ross.
Yeah. But you did, was it Sour Grapes with Larry?
I did Sour Grapes, I did a movie, I think it was his first movie that he wrote and directed.
Yep.
And the script made its way around town, and a lot of big people were interested in it. And but it fell to me and a great actor, Craig Bierko, who's an unsung genius, in my opinion. And so we did this movie, and it was not well received. It was almost immediately criticized for being kind of Seinfeld light.
Yeah.
And, my response was, and so what? It's
people
funny,
like Seinfeld.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, sorry, but it's still, you can still appreciate it. But it didn't do well. It was sort of abandoned for whatever reason, but I don't care. But I got to know Larry and observe him in his habitat. And then just recently I did a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode called The Shucker, where I was the eponymous Shucker, and
Oyster Shucker.
Shucker, and he was great. He's one of the few really successful comedians I think that I've met has gotten fairly well adjusted.
Yeah.
He's not nearly as crazy as his character that he plays.
Right, or as he used to be.
As he used to be, perhaps. But clearly, it sprang from him, but he's just kind of a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, the stories of his stand-up when he was in New York are legendary.
Well, shouting at the audience.
Yeah, or just being like, getting out and being like, no. Yeah. Just walking off stage, or, when he worked on Fridays and SNL and
Fridays,
all that stuff.
that's right. Michael Richards.
Yeah, he's like, he's a better person now.
He's a better person. You can't always say that about people who have that level of success and fame and celebrity.
Yeah.
That which is like, those are all three huge drugs.
Yeah.
So imagine taking three massive drugs.
All at the same time.
And then coming out okay.
Yes, yeah. And then being like, I'm better for it.
Yeah.
It's like Cary Grant's LSD trip that he always talked about.
That's right. Very few
He's the
people.
one guy.
He's the one guy. He looked so good.
Yeah.
Imagine dropping as much asses as he did and looking like him.
It was great. And Roger Corman also is another LSD guy.
Well, I can't speak to Roger Corman's looks or mentality, but I'm glad that his output was...
He's a very button-up businessman.
I guess he is.
He was a chemical engineer in college.
You know what? The hell with this, Ken. Let's drop some acid.
Let's drop some acid now. Oh, I forgot to tell you, that's the second half of the podcast. We watch the shows on acid.
Again, not a terrible idea.
No, I bet somebody will or has done that.
Drop acid.
But to seeing the sort of trappings of fame and that stuff, did you pick up on any of that when you were kind of around it a little bit as a kid? Because you're incribly down to earth.
I'm very down to earth.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're on the floor right now.
I'm on the floor. Well, I mean, it was observable to me, and actually, going backstage at nightclubs, you literally see behind the scenes, and so you get an idea of the kind of two sides of the coin. My father had one comedian that we'd go into his dressing room and he'd be walking around in his underwear with his gut hanging out, smoking a cigarette and drinking scotch, and this is not particularly attractive to a young. It's so not goddamn glamorous.
Yeah.
But there was something compelling about it and odd, and then he would suit up and put on his girdle and underneath his tux, and he'd go out, and suddenly it's like turning. It is like Wizard of Oz, where you go from black and white to color, and it was fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think I always had a primitive understanding of the dual nature of fame. Look, I mean, I've tried my best being a minor celebrity and to surface, to surf it rather, surface, I'm superficial. And look, sometimes it's amazing, and other times it's weird.
Yeah, it's peaks and valleys, which is I forget what I was talking to you the other day, but do you know Matt Nix, who did Burn Notice? And
No.
But he was saying, like, you could have this plateau life, and that's fine, but in the industry here, even or especially when you're doing well, it's huge highs and then sort of lows.
That's right.
And so you have to be okay with the highs in order to justify the lows. And it's not you're pouring the gutter, but sometimes you're like, oh
yeah, that's right. I mean, look, if you're not getting because it boils down to getting affirmation, and it's like getting a hit.
Yeah.
And that's why I liken it to being a drug. And you've got to moderate it. You got to moderate its use, and you have to understand what the hell it is and what you need it for, and if you need it at all. I mean, now everybody can acquire a kind of fame if they do something nauseating, or if they go on Twitter, or if they do something, or YouTube. I mean, I have two teenagers that have turned me on to, or rather have exposed me to these YouTube stars.
Well, sure.
I mean, I don't know
I don't understand it.
but they have millions and millions of followers, and some of them have ability.
Yeah.
Many don't.
They're just eating a sandwich or something, and kids are like,
unboxing a box of boxes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the world we live in now, fame and infamy are synonyms for a lot of people. And that's strange.
Well, can be. I mean, I have a theory that I think I hammered out while I was really drunk.
As all good theories are.
Yes. Having to do with it being the triumph of capitalism, which is to say that everything is monetized now, everything is transactional, and that if everyone can become a celebrity or become a filmmaker on their iPhone or become a musician on their computer or whatever, then in a way the speciality has been obliterated.
If everyone is, then no one is.
Well, in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I remember Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola, talking about the early stages of video camera development. He said, now everybody can be a filmmaker, and that was kind of wonderful. And then everybody became a filmmaker, and that kind of sucked because now the pool in a way was diluted. And I'm not saying that there should be divisions between people, but the same reason an audience is an audience and a performer is a performer, there is that respectful delineation. Ultimately, there is a connection between the two, but it doesn't mean that the audience should come up on stage and just
I can do that.
I can do this. I'm doing it. You can't stop me.
Yeah.
And then it becomes about something else.
Yeah, there's something to be said for gatekeepers, and
I agree.
especially responsible gatekeepers.
Right.
And being a stand-up, I see that all the time because out of all the different arts I've been around and being in bands and having friends and talking to people at the show, stand-up, the line between enthusiastic fan and amateur comedian is razor thin.
Yeah.
And it's gotten even thinner over time. And with stand-up especially, but with a lot of performing arts, if you see someone who's really good at it, they make it seem like they're not doing anything. So you go, I can do that. And if you see someone who's really bad at it, you go, I can do that. Yeah. So it's this, but you need someone to go, you probably can't though.
Well, but you've probably had to acquire or strengthen a muscle that you didn't anticipate ever having to utilize, which is dealing with the audience. And I've been to enough shows. I've gone to UCB a number of times and seen Patton Oswalt do his work, and I'm trying to think who else. And a lot of these comedians are ready for an inevitable interaction with the audience beyond just a response to their material. And I've seen a number of them kind of love it in a way because it mixes things up for them, and it's great when it works out. But I think it's like living in a neighborhood where there's lots of gunfire.
Right.
You just gotta go out there and just deal with possibly getting shot in the leg.
I'll probably get mugged, so here's my plan.
Here's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
That's I don't know if that's great for art in the end.
No, I don't think it is. And we'll dive into this issue in a moment here, but so many comedians come from turmoil.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are most comfortable when they're mitigating conflict.
Interesting.
It's like,
Yeah.
I was the one who kept my parents from fighting. I was the one who diffused situations and stuff. So many of them. So that's the ones I think that relish that sort of thing.
Interesting.
Because they have this sense of accomplishment. Like I've patched up this relatively safe conflict because it's in it's almost like it's almost like paintball.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so that I see that a lot in people, especially people who kind of, some people come out looking for a fight.
That terrifies me.
Yeah. Because you would never, if you're in a play, you're like, here's the play, we've rehearsed it. Here's a plan if someone jumps on the stage and punches someone, just might not happen, but we need to accommodate for that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, that happened this past summer in
in the park,
Shakespeare in the Park. Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, that was
terrible.
Have you ever done that sort of thing, like Shakespeare in the Park, or like really out in the public too?
I mean, I never did Shakespeare in the Park, although I auditioned for it several times when I was a young guy. But this past summer, I did Mamma Mia at the Hollywood Bowl.
Wow.
Where you're fairly exposed, and that was fantastic. It was
just
great.
Performing at the Hollywood Bowl is going to be
18,000 screaming people. That's singing.
Is that the biggest audience you've performed for, live?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Wow.
definitely.
So you picked one here from 1973. It's got Streets of San Francisco on the cover. We got Carl Malden, Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
And it's a very that show was very big.
Yeah.
But is sort of forgotten now. Like, it didn't really, I feel like it wasn't on reruns much. Maybe there wasn't enough seasons or something.
I don't think so. I don't think it was reruns. And, it featured, obviously, Carl Malden was a very well-known actor who transitioned from films to TV. And Michael Douglas was not yet at his peak as an actor, although I think he had produced, didn't he? He did Cuckoo's Nest before that.
No, Cuckoo's Nest was 78.
Okay, 78?
Yeah.
No.
Or 77 maybe?
All right.
And because 5 Easy Pieces is what, 72?
72.
So it was probably 5 years after that.
All
for
right,
Nicholson.
there you go.
But but he was, a season. I mean, Kirk Douglas was still huge.
Kirk Douglas, that's right.
So I imagine him being like, I'm Kirk Douglas's son, maybe I won't get into acting right away.
Yeah.
It's probably the thing to do. But that was, you raise a good point in that, in relation to your career too, like people were film actors or TV actors.
That's right.
And if you switched from one to the other, you stayed there.
Yeah.
And so you had a lot of people at the end of their career would move to TV, older actors who were formerly movie stars.
Right.
Up to and including Lucille Ball. I mean,
absolutely.
For an innovator. Or they were like Michael Douglas and they were using it as a platform to jump off into movies.
Yeah, TV was not well respected. It was always looked down upon by the movie industry, and now it's kind of the reverse.
Yeah.
I mean, TV is the place to go for art and commerce.
Yeah.
I would say.
And you was the first, I mean, you'd done plays, but you were on a soap for a year, right? Which one?
Not even a year. I did As the World Turns. I think that was 1984.
Was it before Flamingo Kid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. Flamingo Kid. That's right. I had a small role in that.
But like, if you wanted to act in New York on television, soaps were the only game.
Soaps were the thing, and the thing is that in keeping with my taste for the kind of retro throwback, vintage New York lifestyle of an actor. The soaps were the thing to do. As the World Turns was shot in the same building that 60 Minutes was shot in. So it was on the west side of Manhattan on 57th Street, and I would see Mike Wallace. Or, I took a leak next to Dan Rather, that type of thing. But the soap that I was on already employed actors who'd been on it since radio.
Yeah.
And I loved being around that and being around the whole... If you've ever seen Soap Dish, which is a kind of amped up version of that.
I love that movie. Kopfverschlagen.
Kopfverschlagen, the only word that he could pronounce. So it was really fantastic. I made my first decent money, which I think was $850 a week, and I was like,
made it.
I'm in Clover, baby.
Yeah.
Taking the subway from Long Island City to work was kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
But the soaps were the thing to do, and it was like a rite of passage.
It's also kind of like an acting boot camp too, I imagine, because
absolutely
you don't have time to figure out what you do, to know you're figuring out what you're doing.
Right.
You just figured it out.
You memorize reams of dialogue and learn what you can about where to stand. And I always found myself wandering into the control room and watching the director direct and the cameras moving and just I love the whole atmosphere.
Were you a watcher of soaps at all as a kid? Like when homesick from school, would you ever flip on, or even like Dark Shadows or anything?
Well, Dark Shadows I actually watched a little bit and used to scare the crap out of me. But when you look at it now, it's so primitive. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
I never watched the soaps as a kid. When I went to college, I had a girlfriend who was hooked on All My Children, and then so I became hooked on it. And hooked is the operative word. I mean, they get you. They're constructed to suck you in because they're serials, right?
Yeah.
And the same dynamic that was present in early serial publishing, magazines and gazettes, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, there was Charles Dickens stuff was mostly
Dickens,
serialized,
yeah,
and
all that stuff.
It's and then it's funny when Stephen King did the Green Mile, tried to do it that way, and people weren't having it.
I don't know. Were they? I think they just became too. What's the word? They just over it, or maybe it was beneath them. When really he was just. I don't know what he was doing.
He was making things accessible. I think the novelty of it. I remember when it first happened, people were like, "Wow, this is $2 a book, and it's going to be for 10 weeks, and this is great." And I guess, no pun intended, on paper, that sounds like a good plan for the way people watch television and consume media at that time. It was like ripe for let's bring this back. And I think something like the sales from volume 3 to volume 4 was like 20% or something of what it was. It was crazy.
Well, and yet, movies like Star Wars or the Indiana Jones movies are all, facsimiles of their early serial, examples, Radar Men on the Moon or whatever the hell it is.
Commando Cody.
And yet people fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
I don't think they would even understand why they fell for it.
It's almost like a primal, just locked into this. Yeah. Did you ever watch, there was a show called Tales of Gold Monkey in 1980 or 81.
Gold Monkey. I remember it, but I don't know if I watched it.
It was pre-Indiana
Was Robert
Jones.
Hayes in that?
Yes.
God damn, I'm good.
You're good. And a dog with an eye patch. And
that's right. Wilford Brimley.
I'm
kidding.
He played the dog. He was very good. But it was mining that world. So it was people that grew up with the same stuff Spielberg grew up with and wanted to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
that was pre-Indiana Jones?
Like a year before. And
how about that?
Bombed,
yeah.
And because I have too much time on my hands, I've tried to figure out, what's the difference here? It's a year apart. They're very similar. I mean, Tales of Gold Monkey is more comedic.
Yeah.
But it's also more serialized because it's a TV show.
Maybe there was something in the presentation of Raiders of the Lost Ark in an actual theater.
Yeah.
That was because in a sense, TV was mostly serialized and people had become inured to it or didn't even give it a thought. But to have that then transferred so boldly with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Spielberg did it, this post-Jaws, so he'd already captured that type of the attention of the audience, and I guess they came to it not expecting to be so enthralled.
Enamored. Yeah, he modernized it too. I think that was the thing. It was Tales of Gold Monkey feels very retro.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably it was in a lot, this will sound stupid for something retro, but was ahead of its time in that.
Yeah,
and that people weren't quite looking for nostalgia yet. They were looking for reinventions of stuff they had a foggy memory of or something.
I guess
could be something along those lines.
I guess.
But speaking of retro stuff, I mean, Flamingo Kid is set in the 60s, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
that's right.
Were you like, I'm going to do movies now? I got a part in a movie? It's...
I mean, I never decided I'm going to do XYZ. It just sort of came my way. Maybe that's actually an issue that I have to cope with. I have to have. It's good to have an idea where you want to go.
Yeah.
Put it that way. And I was kind of coasting. No, I really did want to go from medium to medium and do TV and theater and movies and everything in between. I mean, I was even doing. Dubbing movies and doing ADR for foreign films.
Really? Do you remember any?
Yes. Well, the guy that I worked for chiefly was a fellow named Peter Fernandez.
Oh, yes.
Who's no longer
Speed
with us.
Racer.
Correct.
Yep.
You're good, Ken.
Yep, he did a lot of Mario Bava movies.
That's right. Oh, you're very good. And he had that kind of voice that
Yeah.
I mean, he did, I think, Spritle or whomever
He
was
did
on
like
Speed
5
Racer.
voices on that.
That's
yeah.
right. And I don't know how I fell into it, but I did a bunch of movies with him. And we were all smoking cigarettes in the studio, and it was all reel to reel, and it was hilarious, really old days. One movie I did, 2 movies I remember. One was called Q.
The Winged
Quetzalcoatl.
Serpent?
Yes.
Larry Cohen.
And Michael Moriarty.
Yep.
And Michael Moriarty, it's a weird film. It's about this prehistoric beast or something, some sort of pterodactyl that lived in the top of the Chrysler building. And Michael Moriarty, I'm not sure he was completely sober during it.
That's accurate.
And so there was lots of swearing and cursing in it, and so we had to do a version that replaced all that stuff.
Oh, you did the TV version.
So I did a TV version of it, and I don't know if it ever airs, but if there's a TV version of it, I did his voice saying "darn it" instead of whatever.
My 2 favorite TV versions is Repo Man, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Alex Cox had in his contract that he would get to write the replacement swears.
Right.
For it. So he replaced every motherfucker with Melon Farmer.
Melon Farmer!
And he went with the most ridiculous possible thing, like to make a point.
Yeah.
But it's so funny.
That's funny.
And then in the movie Return of the Living Dead.
I love that movie.
I love that movie. Freddy has a varsity jacket.
Yeah.
And it says "fuck you" on the back.
Yeah.
Which you can't show on TV.
Right.
So they had a second jacket that they shot alternate scenes, and the jacket says TV version.
Wow.
It's so funny.
That's great.
The first time I noticed it, I was like, that's
fantastic.
incredible.
That's good.
I love that stuff. So you're doing the sort of TV replacement, were you doing the foreign films and stuff as well? Because he was writing a lot of Italian.
I did foreign films. I did a French film. I did a Filipino film. I did a weird film that Harvey Keitel was in.
Oh, yes.
And it was shot, I think, in South America, perhaps.
Is this the space movie?
I can't believe you know this. How do you know this, man?
I love movies and television.
Yeah, my God.
Saturn 3, maybe?
Well, no. This actually took place in medieval times. And I don't know where the hell they shot it, man. But maybe in Spain or South America or something.
Yeah.
And so it was medieval, and apparently there was a dragon in the sky, which might have been a spaceship. And one of the background people, or one of the supporting players, who was a local, was saying, the line was, "We're talking about a dragon." And I mean, no disrespect when I do this imitation, but this is what he sounded like. He said, "We talking about a dragon," with a V. And it was right on camera, and it took a long time to get dragon into what was clearly saying a V. "We're talking about a dragon.
Yeah.
Talking about a dragon."
Play him drunk.
It was impossible.
Yeah.
So I did that. There was a movie with Gerard Depardieu about French Revolution that I did voices in, and then any number of.
Would you go see
obscure
them and be like, "That's me"?
I wanted to, because I was hungry for some kind of recognition.
Yeah.
But they were never on TV, and they were again obscure. But I got a little salary, and I was hanging out in the world with which I was so enamored.
And you got to, like, I don't know if you watched Speed Racer as a kid.
Sure I did.
But getting
Gigantor, Speed Racer, a Marine Boy,
Simba the White Lion.
Simba the White Lion is the one.
Yeah, I mean, it was all Peter Fernandez.
All Peter Fernandez.
And getting to be around those kind of people, like you I say this a lot in the show, but you were in a uniquely positioned to come up in an age when the old Hollywood people were still around.
That's right.
And you could still work with them.
Right.
And sort of pick up that very different world as the world was sort of changing.
Well, there were lots of not well known today people who were kind of pioneers in TV and radio that were around when I was a kid. I mean, some of the shows I watched in New York City were local shows featuring Chuck McCann. Chuck McCann is alive today, and he's one of the, like I say, pioneers of live TV. Chuck McCann was a comedian, a sketch person, an impersonator. He
all-around entertainer.
All-around entertainer.
Yeah.
And with him and Soupy Sales and fellows named Sonny Fox, they did Wonderama. They did all these live shows that were beamed all across the country. And, TVs weren't everywhere. And
Right.
many of them were still black and white.
Winky Dink.
Winky Dink and you, Winky Dink and me. That's right. So Peter Fernandez falls into that category. I mean, those people influenced a lot of what we see today.
Yeah.
Certainly the people who created a lot of what we see today. But they're virtually obliterated from our consciousness.
And some people know Ernie Kovacs.
Ernie Kovacs.
Some of the people that were doing really what we would call avant-garde alti stuff
innovative,
now.
not always funny, but weird.
Yeah. And they were the guys that understood how the medium worked and knew how to mess with it, which is really weird for even the old Burns and Allen stuff.
And that's right. Very strange.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, fairly traditional because they're doing Hell's a Poppin'.
That's right.
And
That's right.
which most people don't know Hell's a Poppin' now.
That's right.
And that's a movie too. Like, speaking of things that hold up, like I've watched that movie and it's still funny.
Yeah.
And it's weird. And I was even shocked by some of the very meta stuff in that movie.
Man, look, TV back then, and I guess we're thinking more about TV, was very meta.
Yeah.
Because I guess they didn't have a lot of... There was an FCC, I suppose, and maybe there were some regulations, but it was weird. It wasn't concentrated upon. Certainly not local stuff, and so
Right.
that's where we got a lot of our creature features and all those shows.
Yeah. You had Zachary.
Zachary and
Yep.
was it Vampira and
Yep.
and all that stuff and that came out of just people who were able to buy screen time and they said, okay, do whatever you want, just turn it in by 10 and
Whatever was cheap,
whatever was cheap.
You get to see the Bowery Boys from the 30s because it cost us nothing. That's right.
That's right.
But meanwhile, you're seeing stuff from 40 years ago that you would never watch if you chose.
That's right. And it worked. It was entertaining. And one of the weird things about having kids is that frequently in the car when I was driving them to school, I would find classic radio stations. Certainly on satellite, there's a great classic radio station, and I would put on. When they were younger, Superman and stuff like that, and they were into that.
The Shadow.
But then we discovered Dragnet.
Yep.
And my 11 and 13-year-old kids they would not get out of the car until the Dragnet episode was finished, and it works. It's the dramatic properties are effective.
Yeah.
And work on anybody. And my kids were the canaries in the coal mine. I mean, I couldn't believe.
It's homicide life on the street. It's the police procedurals that we watch now.
And done beautifully.
It's done well. And have you showed them the show?
Oh, they've seen Dragnet, which of course, visually it's not quite the same, but it's still compelling in a way.
Yeah.
But it's not the same because by the time they left radio and were on TV, then they became kind of super square.
Yep. Jack Webb
was square, man.
My favorite thing, and I'm sort of obsessed with old Los Angeles. Like I just love seeing it on film.
Yeah.
And Dragnet is the best example because it was on for so long. It was on for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
You see it change.
Oh, interesting.
Episode by episode because they're shooting the same places.
Yeah.
And the final episode of Dragnet, Jack Webb wrote and directed, and it's an anti-hippie episode.
Naturally.
With LSD. A kid has an LSD overdose.
Yeah.
His name is Blue Boy.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And it's all Jack Webb just disgusted by new
I gotta see
youth
that.
and how it's 1967, I want to say.
Yeah.
And he's just doesn't it's the best clash of this guy who grew up in the 40s, World War II, very clean cut, and this new youth movement and him just not understanding it and hating it.
How about
and
that?
writing this thing, and it's a perfect final episode of that show.
Yeah, I love watching old LA movies too.
Yeah.
And or TV shows. And another great movie is to watch that is Shampoo.
Yes.
Which is an amazing film, Hal Ashby, and you see a lot of the places that we drive around or drive through every day, not changed that much.
Yeah.
But, the Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard has changed.
Yeah. But like I loved, and I'm not like I grew up just outside of Boston, but I used to spend a lot of time in the city. So I'm not like a real city rat, But when I first came out here, downtown, immediately.
That's right.
And I was like, it's so familiar because everything's set in New York, shot here is shot downtown.
Well, yeah.
But there were so many movies that I like, Repo Man, and you know, movies like Night of the Comet and all this stuff. It just had this weird familiar feel.
Night of the Comet.
Yeah, 85. You ever seen it?
No.
Oh, it's great. It's Halley's Comet kills most of the population, and these
What?
two valley girls are like two of the last ones alive, and it's Mary Warrenov's in it, and Jeffrey Lewis.
Wow.
And Kelly Maroney.
Is this a serious film?
It's a comedy,
Right.
But it's smart. And,
interesting.
It's a great movie.
Because wait, I'm thinking also the Tim Daly film. Didn't he do a film called Something of the Comet?
Oh yeah, Year of the
About
Comet.
wine. Year
Yes.
of the Comet.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar to Steve DeJarnett also did a movie called Miracle Mile in 1988. That's not comedic, but is a similar, and that's such an LA movie. And they shot a lot of it at that. It's not a Bob's, but it's a diner on Wilshire that they've used in a million things.
The Norms or something.
Yeah, it's really close forever. It's Johnny's.
Oh, it's the one that they used also in
Was it Pulp Fiction?
the dude. Oh god, that's oh my god.
It's in Midnight.
The dude.
Big Lebowski.
Yeah, Big Lebowski.
And it's also in Midnight Madness, which I love that movie.
Madness.
Michael J. Fox's first movie.
Yeah.
But the premise of that movie is...
You're a geek.
I know, it's sad, isn't it?
My God.
It is of use to
Crazy.
no
Well,
one.
we like each other.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, you have been on Jeopardy, and you did Celebrity Jeopardy, and there was another game
did.
show. Oh, Win Ben Stein's Money you were on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay.
So you're kind of a trivia guy.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, yeah, and also I narrowly missed beating Fred on Win Fred's Money on Howard Stern. I should have known that there were 4 assassinated presidents, and I can only come up with 2.
And did he ask you because you played JFK? Was that the...
No, I doubt it. I don't think they did any kind of research on me, but rather just...
I mean, as a horror fan and a Bostonian, there's 2 things you've done that I know of, and it sounds like even more stuff like the Peter Fernandez stuff that will ever put you in my Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And obviously playing JFK.
Right.
Which was one of your, not one of your first roles, but I mean, it was pre-Wings, or was it 89, 90?
Yeah, it was pre-Wings, yeah.
That's got to be intimidating as hell.
Yeah. I mean, my God, if I could go back and redo 3/4 of those performances, I would, because I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Do you rewatch stuff you've done?
Once in a while.
Yeah.
I mean, my old stuff doesn't run that much on TV anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, some Single White Female sometimes, and but I don't watch too much because it's
critical.
Oh my God, you see yourself age. It's unpleasant.
I mean, you've aged very well. You look,
thanks.
And then
God,
David
but
Schramm, who was Roy, was in a JFK miniseries.
He was?
In 84. He played Robert McGovern or...
George McGovern?
George McGovern. Yes.
Senator?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in that too, which I always thought was
there
weird.
you go, interesting.
But that was a huge miniseries.
It was big. It was with Annette O'Toole and Bill Peterson and Campbell Scott.
Yep.
And a bunch of actors, old friends. I mean, we were all so young. And yeah, I played the baby JFK.
Yeah. PT-109 JFK.
PT-109 JFK, and then Senator and all that stuff. And then the last scene of me was being inaugurated, and that was just horrible. But the early stuff was quite interesting when people were still enamored with the Kennedys and that whole world. And of course, it probably bears no resemblance to what really went on.
Oh, I'm sure it was hilarious.
But still. Okay. Here's interesting trivia. In that miniseries, there was a young actor who played my brother, a baby brother, I'm trying to think.
Playing Bobby?
Maybe he was young Bobby. And it's Casey Affleck.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, he has the regional pedigree.
I suppose he does, yeah. Because I certainly didn't.
Yeah. It's was that hard to latch onto? Because that's an accent that when people do a Boston accent, they do a Kennedy accent, and only the Kennedys talk that way.
But that was it. I mean, we were all talking like this and trying not to overdo it and try to sound, but it was ridiculous. Yeah, very strange. And when you hear Bobby go over there,
it's so weird.
It's very weird.
I also love that JFK tape of him flipping out about Jordan Marsh. Have you ever heard that?
No.
He's flipping out on this guy.
Kennedy?
JFK, Kennedy.
Wow.
He's a silly man. I wouldn't put him in charge of a cat house. And it's
Lord.
because he was having a budget fight with the Air Force or something, and there was a big fashion sort of magazine spread of Jackie O with the new baby's room with all this brand new furniture from Jordan Marsh.
Yeah.
Which that really bothered him because
Yeah.
I'm trying to make money, argue about money, and now it's a fucking Jordan Marsh. Like he's flipping out.
Wow.
And it's so funny. And he's so mad, and it's hilarious to have someone mad go, he's a silly man. Like in anger.
Yeah, you silly man.
I would put him in charge for cat house.
Jordan Marsh.
And then the other thing, The Shining obviously is a favorite of mine. But I think maybe a handful of people I've ever met that was directed by Dario Argento.
That's right.
And is Jennifer?
Jennifer, yeah. I was working on another miniseries with Mick Garris, great director, and it was called Desperation. Perhaps.
No, the Stephen King miniseries.
Yeah, Stephen King miniseries. Yeah, that's right. And I was always a big horror fantasy fan, and I loved comic books too. And one of my favorite books were the Creepy and Eerie magazines.
Warren Publications.
And not to mention Famous Monsters of Filmland. I actually got to go to the...
I don't have my Famous Monsters shirt on. Yeah.
I actually went to the Acker Mansion.
Yeah.
Which was pretty
When did you go?
sleazy.
When you first moved out here? Or?
No. This was after when I was doing Wings. I think it was during Wings or maybe afterwards. But John Ritter became a friend of mine, and he was also another horror geek.
Yeah.
And he brokered our being able to go to the Acker Mansion, and we went, and it was wonderful and hilariously low rent.
Yeah.
And
Broken.
oh my God! You just kind of
To get you, this is the ring that Bela Lugosi wore. You got the whole spiel,
we
and
just thought that Fari Ackerman probably just licked every square inch of the place. No disrespect, So one of my favorite stories in I think it was Creepy was Bernie Wrightson's classic story Jennifer. It was I forget the name of the writer, but sorry about that. But of course Wrightson's visuals were everything, and I just loved his style. And I was talking to Mick Garris, and I said, "Hey, why don't you?" Oh no, and he was telling me that he was about to do this show. Featuring Masters of Horror, featuring just segments. It was an anthology show, different directors. And I said, this would be pretty good.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't you write it? And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a version of Jennifer. And of course, I wanted to be in it. And when we found out that Dario Argento was going to do it, I was over the moon.
Yeah.
We got going, and it was a reality. And Dario Argento was, and it still is, wonderful. His American accent was almost like something that you would do as a joke.
Right.
He talk like this. Hey, hilarious.
Mamma mia.
Mamma mia, he said. And he took the script and embellished it. It was already sexy in the original story, and I really didn't deviate from the original story at all. I had to pad it a little bit in order to make it into a...
Yeah, because it's like a 4 or 5 page story.
Something like that, yeah. And he put in some twisted stuff.
Yeah, in true Argento fashion.
I mean, twisted. But it was a very good experience. Fantastic actress. But she's amazing, and she took this role...
It's a tough role.
Oh, my God, and a hideous face, a fantastic makeup. And gave it real soul. It was interesting, man. Dario Argento, it was pretty cool.
Since I started doing the show, they have me do Q&As at a lot of conventions and things.
Yeah.
And I was doing Monster Palooza. It might have actually been Rick Baker that built this, but he built a Wrightson Frankenstein, and it was
gorgeous.
True to life and amazing. And it was like not just Frankenstein. You did Wrightson's Frankenstein, and seeing what it would look like in person, and I was stunned by it. It was amazing.
Wrightson was my favorite. I mean, I didn't get a chance to meet him. Carrie Ann Fleming is the name of the actress.
Yeah.
She's superb. I mean, really amazing. Yeah, Bernie Wrightson. I love that whole world of horror fantasy. I loved it, and also the old Universal monsters.
Yep.
A lot of silent stuff. And, I was really into that.
Which we got exposed to on TV.
That's right.
That was you didn't have video stores.
Nope.
You maybe sometimes revival houses would show that stuff, but no one. I mean, maybe in college you'd see it, but we got this education on the sort of inadvertently on the history of horror cinema, and it's crazy to people when I say, Yeah, I mean, PBS would show Nosferatu,
That's right.
around Halloween or something, and it was just like,
Or
what?
you would discover something late at night.
Yeah.
Again, the programmers didn't particularly give a shit.
Right.
I guess, so they just threw it out
Bought
there.
it in a package and whatever.
And it was kind of amazing. And also there was that anticipation. If you look in the TV guide back then, you would see, oh my God,
Saucerman is on.
that's right, Invasion of the Saucerman.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. And so if you were into these movies, which I was looking forward to, the anticipation really kind of helped the whole experience of watching it.
And you remember it more.
Oh,
Because
completely, yeah.
you're like, I may never
Yeah.
see this again.
Yeah.
I need to absorb every second of this.
That's right.
And it's, and also...
I saw the producers on TV for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mel Brooks' movie. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of movies, they would show uncut.
Hard Day's Night. Or Uncut, that's right.
Yeah. Like, I remember TV 38 in Boston showed the Deer Hunter uncut, of all things, and made a point of it.
Okay, I remember, I think, I maybe New York, maybe they showed it all over the place, or
Yeah.
maybe that was the whole point.
38 went down to Long Island, too, from Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they did it because they wanted to be true to the experience and
Yeah.
all that stuff. I remember that. Yeah.
And was it not PIX every year would show King Kong on Thanksgiving? Was it PIX?
Probably WPIX.
Yeah, that was like their big. Like everyone I know who grew up in the New York area, like
March of the Wooden
associates King
Soldiers.
Kong with Thanksgiving, and people are like,
That's
"What?"
right. Yep. King Kong,
Like, that's
March
a
of the Wooden
thing.
Soldiers in the morning, Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, which it would be difficult to get a kid to sit down and watch Laurel and Hardy now.
However, well, you got to start them young, and
Yeah.
I did that with my kids, and they have no fear of black and white. We
Yeah.
got heavily into Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers, and the funny thing is that, and this is kind of heresy, they never cottoned to the Three Stooges after they were exposed to the early stuff. It was
Yeah.
just it was too ridiculous for them.
I didn't even like it as a kid. My dad loved it.
Yeah,
Dad
yeah.
loved it, but I really enjoyed the sort of verbal stuff.
Absolutely.
The very vaudeville,
Yep.
sort of fast talk, play with word stuff
Yep.
that we didn't get to see as much later because it was just out of fashion.
There's something also a little raw about a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff, especially if you are going back to TV. If you want, I used to love watching Abbott and Costello show,
Yeah.
which I preferred to their movies.
Yeah.
The Abbott and Costello show, the TV show, was more anarchic and really directly descended from vaudeville.
Yeah. It was more their true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it was, you didn't know what would happen. That's the thing I loved.
You know,
about
when they would
TV.
have Stinky on, Joe Besser,
Yeah.
and that was my favorite, Mike the Cop.
Yep. Or they would have, I think Lon Chaney Jr. popped up in a couple of episodes.
On one of the shows. Well, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one of my favorite Lon Chaney Jr. stories, and you may have heard this
Go
one,
ahead.
is well-known alcoholic. But he was in a live TV adaptation of Frankenstein.
Oh,
And
I'm already
it's
getting nervous.
When it was out live, he thought it was a rehearsal. And so there's scenes, and there's kinescopes of it. There's scenes where like there's a big, rock that he's supposed to smash.
Yeah.
So he's like, ah, and then gently puts it back down because you can't smash it. We're rehearsing. And it leads this air of really bizarre undertones to it. Changes the story because you're like, Frankenstein's so mad and he's really committed, but he doesn't want to destroy anything.
Wow. I'm now that's going to I'm
It's
gonna
up
go
on
mental
YouTube.
looking for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
There's a scene where he's supposed to smash through a door and he very gently opens it and walks through and
Interesting.
shuts it.
It's more
And
sociopathic than
yeah.
just the abnormal brain.
Yeah, it's like, wow, he knew enough to come through the door politely.
nice.
It's
Good
very,
for
very
him.
strange. Is there anyone that you really looked up to or were sort of blown away by growing up that you watched on TV that you worked with later that just
worked with
starstruck
later.
you?
Oh my God. Apropos of what we've been talking about, a lot of the people that I watched on TV and movies were old.
Yeah.
Even then, by the time I watched them. I did get a chance to meet Jerry Lewis. I was a huge fan of Jerry Lewis's movies growing up. I remember seeing The Family Jewels in the theater and just screaming. I was so, absolutely bowled over. But I got to meet him. I was doing The Producers in New York, and he came to one of the shows. And it was brilliant. The same thing with Carol Burnett. She came
Yeah.
to a show, and I've actually seen her since, and she remembered me. It's always nice to meet those people. The older ones are much nicer, invariably. I think
Absolutely.
they kind of mellow and they get it. There's something about the mortality of, and
Yeah.
the kind of temporary nature of being famous. Even
Life's too short.
Life's too short, and I think they were terribly kind to be remembered by somebody like me who's so appreciative.
Yeah.
This really doesn't address what we were just talking about, but several years ago, a bunch of years ago, I was in a local store market, and I saw a woman in a wheelchair with her attendant, and it was Beatrice Straight from Network.
Yeah.
And I think she died shortly thereafter. And she was beautiful and older and had these milky, gorgeous, big blue eyes. And I just had to do it. I said, "Excuse me, Miss Straight. I just want to tell you how much I loved your work." And she looked at me with such kind of wonder and kind of gratitude that it was very moving. So I kind of count that as the examples of the people who at least I looked up to. I didn't work with.
Yeah, but I
was able to contact them. Yeah,
and there's something so satisfying about being able to face thank someone for their work.
If it's only satisfying if they get it.
Oh yeah, I mean they're not like get away from me, kid.
Get away from me, kid. You stink. Yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you?
Oh yeah, please do.
That's right.
But yeah, no, and so, but I was surprised when I started doing stand-up, started doing the show, how many people are very humble, and very grateful, and very accommodating.
That's
like
right.
even like doing shows with Patton or something.
Yeah.
Like I've opened for him at colleges and stuff, and I'm not an asshole, but I don't know how he does it, because he stood there and there was 200 kids lined up to meet him, and they all asked him the same questions, or dumb questions, or the same question he's answered a million times. Yeah. And he was answering it like he'd never heard it before, and, grateful to meet him. And I'm just like, that's a skill set.
Well, it's I guess it comes with the understanding that if you're an entertainer, your job is to entertain everybody.
Yeah.
I'm sure you hit a wall eventually.
But I never fault anyone when you get like a TMZ story, or it was like, this guy's a dick or whatever. And I'm like, he's picking up his kids at karate. You know what I mean?
That's
I'm like,
what that's about.
You don't know what kind of bad day that person had.
There's actually very few dickheads in the industry. And most actors and performers are kind of like, I want to say middle class.
They're blue collar,
and they make a living, they hustle, and that's what it's about. There's great humility.
Because if you're a dickhead, you generally don't work.
Or if you do, it's a horrible experience. But people, I guess, when it's just about money at that point.
Yeah, unless you're a gigantic star. But like the 80% of working actors, you can't conduct yourself that way, because we were like, we don't need you here.
That's right.
We'll have someone else.
I mean, the shows that I'm working on lately are comprised of people who only really want to work with nice people.
Yeah.
And I'm doing Mom now on CBS.
Yeah.
Allison Janney and Anna Faris and Bill Fichtner and Mimi Kennedy. And all these people, all they want to do is work with nice people.
Just have fun and do good stuff.
That's it.
Yeah.
They know how they're grateful for the opportunity that they've been given, and they know how lucky they are to be where they are. Nobody forces you to work in TV.
Or like the cast you have on the Librarians.
Oh, well, that's great. Larroquette and Noah Wiley and all those people.
John Roberts is an old Boston comic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
I mean, and people are mostly grateful. It's as I am. I have tons of gratitude.
And you get to choose scenery on that show, though, too. Like, you get to go all out.
I did that one episode, me and Gia Carides, who's another fantastic actor, Australian, and who's in Simply Ballroom. Anyway, they gave me full license to go totally apeshit on that show.
And Larroquette, too. I mean, like, he's
so smooth.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts he got recently was they had him on Chuck play like a depressed, older, alcoholic James Bond.
Oh my
so
God,
he was like a spy in the 60s who was like a functional alcoholic and a sad guy, but still could turn it on,
Interesting.
And I was like, I want to see a show about that guy.
That's great.
That's an interesting character.
I agree.
But then when you got Wings, like that was the first longest regular gig you had, maybe?
Yeah,
I mean, that
was the biggest thing.
Life-changing, right? Where you're like...
It was. I mean, I made a lot of money and had a lot of exposure and learned a lot and met a lot of great people and, but I was young and... again, if I could go back and rejigger some things and make some course corrections. I certainly
Really?
will.
On like your work?
Sometimes in the work, yeah. I mean, the thing about doing that show was that it started broad, but then we were on for so long that eventually we got very easy with the material and very relaxed, which is where I like to be.
It became a great
if I look
ensemble.
at old episodes, they're unwatchable to me. I'm too broad.
Yeah, I mean, but that ensemble, especially in the later seasons.
Yeah, it was good, and we incubated a lot of great writers, and Yazbek and Tony Shalhoub.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great.
And Roy as a character is...
You're fixated on Roy.
Well, there's nothing like that on TV.
Yeah.
You wouldn't... I mean, maybe now, but in 1990...
an out-and-out dick.
Yeah, and he was unapologetic. He didn't look like people on TV.
No.
Especially not a series regular.
That's right.
The only other thing I'd seen him in before that was he played a child molesting murderer in Spencer for Hire.
Spencer for Hire, God.
In an episode with Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy.
Yep, and it was like, this guy is working on the show.
He was a Juilliard grad. I mean,
hilarious.
David Schramm was one of the first, I think, graduates of Juilliard with John Houseman or something like that. And Kevin Conroy, too, I believe.
Chase. Yeah. Didn't Tim Daly go there?
He went to Bennington.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember hearing something like him and Tim were up for a lot of the same roles all the time.
Him and Kevin Conroy?
Yeah.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Because they're both, square-jawed. Handsome.
I'll do this.
Yes.
And then Tim did Superman and Kevin did Batman.
How funny is that?
Which is really weird.
That's right. They hate each other's guts.
Yeah, they fight all the time.
All the time.
But then you just see Weber show.
Ugh, yeah.
Which, this sounds like bad territory.
Well, that was after Wings, and I was somehow convinced, and I convinced myself that the show that we had, which in and of itself wasn't a bad idea. It was really, if you wanted to break it down, it wasn't much different from, say, Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean, I'm no Larry David, but it was a guy wakes up, steps in shit. That's the show. Haha. And you make the most of it with comedic material. It was called Cursed originally, and but the network was afraid that it would freak people out. That it was called Cursed. Is it a literal curse? Maybe we need to make it a literal curse. And we were, I guess me especially, didn't understand what I needed to do, what was needed in that situation, which was either to fight for the idea and possibly walk away, or give in. And we basically gave in, and we were giving in so often that we lost the initial kind of core of the show.
The enthusiasm of doing it was curbed.
It was curbed. And we had to, make these adaptations on the fly and create a show that wasn't what was conceived of originally, and it just didn't work. I don't even think we went a full season, but
a great cat like Paula Marshall was great.
Wendell Pierce, Paula Marshall, Amy Peets, Chris Elliott. And so there were a lot of amazing pieces. But I'm not telling tales out of school, but I don't think the show was supported creatively by the studio, and we made a major and very difficult change with the writers, and the creators were fired, and that doesn't make anybody feel better.
Well, it's the kind of like when you see good TV, and I think this is less and less now because we have more true showrunners. Mm-hmm. It's despite of everything, not because of everything. It's like, how did this? We managed to, we went through the whole obstacle course and made it out.
Well, on the other hand, there are shows that can evolve. I mean, I did one season of the show that was called Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, Aaron Sorkin show, and that could have used a second season. And I believe that at least with the second season, I have to cough. Well, it's all over your microphone. Don't worry about that. It'll dry up, and when it does, you just pick it right off.
Yeah, we'll sell it on eBay.
Or you can do that, sick bastard.
Have you ever seen that? David Cronenberg's son made a movie about that called Retrovirus, and the premise, it's very Cronenberg. The premise is people buy celebrities' diseases.
I like that.
So you would be like, I have Marilyn Monroe's flu strain or whatever it is, and they get them like given to them.
Oh, wow.
Which
that's going to happen, I'm sure.
That was the thing. I was like, this is kind of funny. And then I watched it. I'm like, our people might actually already be doing that.
It's like Ted Williams, when he died, apparently his head was removed and frozen, and apparently his son or somebody was accused of selling dime-sized core samples to people.
Yep. That was a big story in Boston, as
What do you think of
imagine.
that? Really? Oh, the splendid splinter.
People, back to the horror mags, they would sell all kinds
Like a
of weird
spud
stuff.
gum, spud gun, where you stick the gun in the
core
in the,
sample.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember, they would sell like Dracula dirt. Remember that pendant that was like dirt from Dracula's castle?
That's right.
In the 80s, they were selling pieces of Ed Gein's house.
Not really.
They claimed they were, and like they'd be in a
yeah.
little case or.
Yeah.
So people buy weird stuff. I mean,
People do anything.
Even me, I'm like, I think that's weird. Or the backdrop from Plan 9.
Oh, the
We're selling that
backdrop
from the airplane, that shower curtain.
Yeah.
They were selling little 1 centimeter square
Yeah,
pieces in
yeah.
a case, and I'm just like, I guess if you want.
People buy anything.
Are you the kind of actor who keeps mementos from things you've done?
I used to keep the chair backs with your name on it.
Yep.
And then I stopped doing that because I was working a lot and I had a bunch of chair backs.
What do you do with
And
these?
What the hell are they good for? For the inevitable estate sale when I'm 75 and
Make a sling.
standing behind a bar smoking as I watch people pick over the bones of my
Yeah.
So I stopped that, but I saved my uniform and boots and dog tags from Hamburger Hill, which was my first kind of big movie that I made in '87. And I have some items here and there, but mostly it's all material, ephemeral stuff that doesn't amount to very much.
Right, but it does to you.
It does, yeah. Some things, absolutely. The thing is that it's become very, very much of a job for me, and I've purposely not attached so much sentiment to it, because I found that I would just kind of reminisce too much, the old days, way prematurely than I should be.
Yeah,
I'm still going strong. I'm not going to start getting sentimental.
but it's a workman craft. Like you're you're almost looking at it like a temp. Like today, I'm in this office.
Well, that's right. I mean, I've become very much of a journeyman actor and enjoy that. But on the other hand, it's also an outgrowth from the earlier thing we talked about, fame.
Yeah.
And how I was really determined to not be a dickhead. And now it took me a while to differentiate between people who were just arrogant jerks and people who believed in themselves enough that they were dedicated to what they were doing at any given time or on any given project, enough not to indulge even a fan or something. Sorry, I can't do that right now. I'm really busy. Excuse me. That I was afraid people wouldn't like me.
Right.
Okay?
I'm working.
I'm working, and but now I see the efficacy of doing that. It's really important to believe in what you're doing. But I didn't try to attach too much importance to things, chairbacks.
I always
T-shirts,
cast jackets, satin
jackets.
which no one ever wears.
I do have a One Wings Christmas gift that we gave, which was a little picnic basket that had Wings,
the logo on it,
and that's about it.
I mean, it's funny because I always, to use the office metaphor, when you have people, I mean, these are a day, or maybe you work 3 days on something. I mean, not in Wings, but you worked in a movie for a week or whatever, and 30 years ago, and people ask you these very specific questions about things, and it's like, if I came up to you and I was like, hey, in 91, you made some photocopies, and they were outstanding. Do you remember how many you made, or what the toner, you're not going to remember
that's the Star
that.
Trek curse, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just started doing the kind of signing conventions, which are amazing.
Yeah.
To actually meet people who are so appreciative. It's kind of great.
Yeah.
But I know I'm old friends with Jonathan Frakes and LeVar Burton, and they've been doing it for 30 years. And man, they get asked all sorts of stuff that's absolutely impossible. And I did one episode of Deep Space Nine, and I'm in the canon now. I'm in the pantheon. But I don't know my character's name, and I learned recently what it was. So in case somebody asked me, but he was a Bajoran, so he's got that rough nose. I guess that's to grate nutmeg over. I guess that's a whole race that
Just loves
They
nutmeg.
spawn during Christmas, and they
Okay,
grate nutmeg,
yep.
and then they go back to their home
I
planet.
knew families like that.
Yeah.
It was a weird place.
I guess so.
Yeah, but it must be weird too when people automatically assume that if you're in something, you're really into that.
Yeah. It's odd. I don't remember.
Which you
last
are
week.
a bit. I mean, the horror stuff, like you're pretty associated with Stephen King on television.
Yeah.
And
I've been asked about it enough that I now have a decent series of responses.
Yeah.
and an understanding of that world. And I mean, as opposed to doing sitcoms and stuff. I mean, those aren't books.
Yeah.
The Shining is this amazing book that's so rich in detail.
Yeah.
Wings episode is as good as it is, arguably, is not a novel.
I mean, Wings always one of my favorite sitcoms ever is Barney Miller.
Yeah, love Barney Miller.
Absolutely, and it's
Wings has a connection to that, by the way.
Oh, really? What's the Wings connection?
Well, the first season was directed by Noam Pitlick.
Yeah,
and Noam Pitlick directed all 10 seasons of Barney Miller.
I didn't know he did everything.
Yes,
Yeah.
but before that, he was an actor, a character actor, whose
okay.
face you've seen. He's in The Graduate.
Okay.
He has a small part in The Graduate. He's in the movie The Fortune Cookie, Billy Wilder.
Okay.
And did all sorts of theater and live TV. He's got a tough-looking mug. In The Graduate, he's the gas station attendant.
Oh,
when Dustin Hoffman is flying up, the coast.
To go to the church.
Yeah. Do you know where so-and-so is? And he thinks he's a priest. I'm the priest. I'm performing the ceremony, you see? And so Noam is trying to say, okay, Father, good luck, Father. That's him.
Okay. Yep.
And in The Fortune Cookie, he's one of the two guys, the insurance agents, the insurance investigators who were sent to spy on Jack Lemmon.
Yep. Did you know that at the time?
I sure did, yeah.
And because it sounds like you're the kind of guy who's like, if you have some downtime, you're going to go sit in the booth.
I knew exactly who he was. And he was the greatest guy.
Because Barney Miller is a show that didn't actually have a live audience after the third episode.
I didn't know that.
So Danny Arnold, who created that show, he was sort of a dictator on the set, but he hated being constricted by the time of you can't keep an audience there for 4 days, although sometimes it feels like it.
Man.
So he wouldn't, after the fourth episode, he was like, no more audience. And they would show the finished episodes to audiences.
How interesting.
But you would never know watching it now. But it kind of makes sense because so much of that show is very small for a sitcom.
Yeah.
And my favorite sitcoms that are ensemble characters and are verbal, and I think Wings falls into this a lot, and I always put it in the category of like sort of 90s sitcoms that don't get enough credit.
Yeah.
Like Mad About You, Wings,
Yeah.
and News Radio.
Yeah,
and Spin City.
I agree.
I think those four hold up and are just as good as Seinfeld,
Yep.
and a little more timeless.
Well, they're not as edgy.
Yeah.
Certainly Wings wasn't, and it wasn't particularly sexy the way Friends was, or even Cheers in a way. I mean, it was.
There weren't will they, won't they so much,
No.
even though that was written into some stuff. It didn't, but it seemed like a true group of people that knew each other.
Well, eventually it was, and also, as I said earlier, it was the show itself was an incubator for great writers, and Chris Lloyd and Steve Levitan, who do Modern Family, and many other writers who are currently working on other shows, started at Wings, or at least passed through. Yeah.
And it's those shows. It's evident that the sort of DNA is in other things later. Even Barney Miller, Reinhold Weege, who created Night Court, worked on that.
Yeah, interesting.
And you can see seeds of Barney Miller in Night Court.
Yeah.
And in the Night Court, and then John Larroquette show, which was so dark and great and weird. But again, I think some of those shows might have been too ahead of their time. Which same with Cursed, that if you had done that 3 years later when people were used to that kind of thing, maybe.
I suppose, maybe. I don't know if Curse was ever ahead of its time, but I mean, conceptually, it was just a simple idea. I don't, and in fact, Seinfeld in a way had been doing it. I mean, we even wrote an episode that I never went to air, where we never shot it, where the cast was waiting online at a theater.
Yeah,
it was like being at the
little bottle episode.
Yeah, that's right, and it was funny as hell.
And it's hard to do.
It was hard to do. It required great effort.
Is there anything you used to watch that you really wanted to be on that you didn't get to do? Or
oh man,
Or side note, while you're thinking, does it ruin something if you're on it? Like if there's something you love, is it hard to get into it if you're on it?
Well, I'll tell you what happened to me. I was a big fan of this show that only ran for 2 seasons, Crime Story.
Oh, that's right. You're in season 2.
And I somehow, I don't think I was even on Wings yet.
Was 85, 86?
Yeah.
86, 87 was
I
right
was
after Miami
able
Vice.
to ask my agents to see if they can get me on that show.
Wow.
And I had no resume, really. I may have done a couple of things. And somehow I got on that show. And I was thrilled to death, man.
It makes sense if you're
Whoa.
backstage at Sinatra as a kid and you're doing Crime Story in the Vegas season.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
Ted Levine beat the crap out of me
Oh,
on
yeah.
film. And, so
Farina.
And I got to be friends with one of the handsomest man in North America next to Tim Daly, Billy Campbell.
Oh, yeah. Billy Campbell, yeah. The Rocketeer.
That's right. That's right. Bill Smitrovich, and I'm friends with. And we were in, Las Vegas, man. Tony Dennison, was there. It was fantastic. So that was an example of being able to do that. But, there are shows I'm desperate to be on now. I would love to be on Fargo. I'd love to be on Westworld. I'd love to be on Walking Dead. I'd love to be on what's that great show with Jane Fonda and
the two names.
and Lily Tomlin.
Yeah.
And, just there's such great TV that I want to be a part of it. That's why it's so great to be on Curb this season, last season, because I watched it for years. I knew Larry, and it's like you can't say, "Hey, will you put me in?"
Yeah.
You just got to say it's great. And I guess my turn came around.
Right. Eventually,
it was thrilling.
It's so. Curb less so because it's not like they have an iconic set like the Cheers set or something.
But what was iconic was all the characters.
Yeah.
And I was in scenes where Susie and Jeff were there, and Ted was there,
Right.
and
you're improving with them as their character.
Crazy.
Yeah.
JB Smoove, I was in heaven.
Yeah.
It was in heaven.
Like in Crime Story too, it must have been all encompassing because it's a period piece.
It was great.
So you're in it. Like you step into that
That's
world.
right.
And
I was very enthusiastic.
Underrated show.
Very underrated
It
show.
was, again, I think ahead of its time where no one was doing retro set shows.
That's right.
And the way I always explain Crime Story to people is Mad Men Miami Vice.
That's right. Yeah.
You'd like it. It's Mad Men
I wonder if
Miami
they
Vice.
would ever show, and I didn't even see it at the time, but even it sounds great. Cop Rock.
Yeah.
I never saw it. I wonder if if they
good.
ever brought it on now.
It's on DVD. Shout Factory put it
Yeah.
out. And there was 4 musical shows that they tried to do late 80s, early 90s. One was Cop Rock. One was Hull High, which was the same guy who did... what's his name? He did the big one everyone...
Fame?
High School Musical. Not High School Musical.
High School Musical?
The one that's Glee.
Glee.
He did Glee later, but
really?
he basically tried to do this in 1990.
Really?
And it was a huge bomb, and Cop Rock was a huge bomb. And there was one other one about people worked in a mall. And it was so weird because musicals are a staple genre of movies and theater. People are used to people just breaking into song, but for whatever reason on TV, they were like, no way.
Interesting, because what I've also observed is that if you keep something on the air, and if it's worthwhile keeping it on, it finds an audience. And no greater example of that is than Seinfeld.
Yeah.
They kept that on, and it found the audience. I really believe, and as I was saying earlier, if they'd done that with Studio 60, critics be damned.
They do it so less often now. I mean, Cheers would have been done after one season.
That's right.
It was like in the bottom 10.
Yeah.
St. Elsewhere.
Yeah.
Almost all the NBC shows. And having the faith in a show to sort of find the audience and sort of find its voice a little bit, even though like Cheers, that pilot's perfect. It's kind of fully formed.
But it's counterintuitive if all you want to do is make a buck.
Right.
And again, the triumph of capitalism. If you're going to have corporations taking over the arts, taking over the media, then you're not going to give things proper time to grow and flower and all that stuff, which is
and no one wants to be the one that takes the risk. So you get a weird show that ends up being a fluke hit. Mm-hmm. Then it's okay to do 10 ripoffs of it.
Right.
So if one musical show, someone else took the hit and it paid off for them, now we'll do it.
Right.
So you get those, after X-Files, we got a bunch of sci-fi shows. After Twin Peaks, we got a bunch of those kind of shows. After Friends, we got all those kind of shows.
Yeah.
And so it's it's again counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Because they'll do it, but only if someone else has already done
That's
it.
right. Yeah, it's not the best process to create stuff, but all those great shows do take risks.
Is there anything that you? I mean, it sounds like you still watch a lot of TV.
I really don't watch a lot.
Okay.
Of TV. My daily diet is I watch Seinfeld reruns.
Yep.
I watch Shark Tank.
Okay.
And I watch UFC. That's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, they're all thematically similar. People I know were on Shark Tank. They have a company called Victoria's Kitchen Almond Water. And
Victoria's Kitchen Almond Water.
it's really good. There's two LA. They live out here, and they're French. They were .com people, and this guy started making this drink his grandmother used to make in France.
Almond water?
Yeah, it's almond and vanilla and rose.
Okay.
And it's really nice.
Yeah.
And I could only get it out here, and they were on Shark Tank, and the sharks hated it.
Yeah.
Because they were like, this is a woman's drink, and it's too much sugar in it. Can you make it without sugar?
Women's drink.
And he was like, no, that's the recipe. And they were like, make it with fake sugar. And he's like, no, that's not what it is.
yeah.
And they were like, we're not doing it. And I was like, oh, poor guy. But he
Poor
sold a
guy.
bunch after that. But I do find that most people I know that are actors, if they just want to tune out, will watch something like that.
And I realized that I hadn't really watched Seinfeld when it was on the air at the time. I don't know why.
You were working. I mean, in Wings was...
Yes. But I've always, not always, but in the last 20 years or so, I've watched TV grudgingly. I'm not exactly sure why. It's not like I'm jealous of other actors or any of that stuff.
But is it like work? Like you feel like you're doing research?
I just feel like I feel guilty if I'm sitting in front of the TV.
Right. It's
You
too
know,
passive.
just hanging out. It's a little passive for me. But now that, I'm a father and all that stuff, and when the day is done doing my crap, I like to just chill out.
Yep.
I eat one of those special chocolate blueberries.
Yep.
And next thing I know, it's midnight, and I've watched both episodes of Seinfeld on 2 different channels.
Yep.
I watch from 10 to 11, 11 to 12, same 2.
Yep. And is there anything your kids watch that you watch with them or have in the past where you're like, either like it or like, I don't understand what's going on?
They went apeshit on Breaking Bad,
Oh, wow.
Narcos. They are not afraid of anything.
Wow.
They go for it. And it shows that I haven't really watched. I mean,
Yeah.
I watched Breaking Bad, amazing. They watch all of that.
They like the heavy crime stuff.
They like heavy crime stuff. Well, look, when they were kids, like I say, we went through all the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy and Superman and all that stuff. But what else did we watch? Oh, okay. So they took me through Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely genius and terrifying
and bonkers.
and depressing. There's a whole divorce. I'm divorced now. There's a whole divorce component in it where it was so painful that my kids were looking at me like, oh, sorry, Papa, we didn't mean to. It's okay.
We should have warned you about this.
Why did I thought I was watching a cartoon? God damn it!
You snuck this in.
Thanks.
Oh,
dickheads.
there was a Wings Duckman crossover.
Not a duck. There was. I mean, I did a voice on Duckman, but it wasn't a Wings thing.
You were playing Hackett though on it.
Really?
Yes.
I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
That
I
just
just
hit
had
me
lunch
'cause
with the Jason Alexander.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love Duckman. That was a show.
Duckman, yeah.
That was a show that would do better now.
Probably.
In the wake of things like Rick and Morty and that kind of stuff.
And then you look at, I was one of the original Ren and Stimpy fanatics.
Yep.
And that really set the pace.
Absolutely.
That made everything possible.
Billy West has been on the show a few times. And
love him,
he's an
man.
old Boston comic. And
Oh, God.
yeah, hearing the stories about that show is nuts because he told me this is the craziest thing I've heard about that show. Kurt Cobain was an enormous fan of Ren and Stimpy.
Right.
And John Kay, who did Ren and Stimpy,
Chris Falusi.
Chris Falusi, that's how you pronounce
Yeah, not
it?
Crick Falusi.
Chris Falusi. He's a giant redhead Canadian Viking crazy man.
Yeah.
And so MTV and Nickelodeon were in the same building in New York. Kurt Cobain's there doing something and talking about Ren and Stimpy because MTV's there both. And one of the producers was like, they make it around the corner. Let's go.
1515 Broadway.
Broadway, yeah.
That's right.
And so they take him over to John Kay and they're like, this guy loves Ren and Stimpy. He wrote songs for it. He wants to do something for the show. And he's like, who are you? And it's like, well, he's like, some skinny weird kid came in.
Yeah.
And then they were like, what? And he was like, just so Kurt Cobain had songs for Ren and Stimpy that he wanted
That we will never hear.
We'll never hear. Or maybe we have heard them and don't know that they were originally written for Ren and Stimpy.
God, Ren and Stimpy.
But I was like, Billy told me, I was like, that's insane.
Insane.
And you never know who's going to be a fan of the thing you do.
Well, that's true, and I've met a few people, online too, like Sarah Silverman. I met her. We became friendly. She was a fan of my tweets.
Yeah. Oh, your tweets are very
shocked.
funny. Yeah.
But yours are good too. Man.
Oh,
thanks. We follow each other.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I was like, oh, it makes sense that he was around Borscht Belt comedians sometimes. They're very like,
I like to write ridiculous things.
But where else would you get an outlet to do that?
That's right. It's a free writer's room.
Yeah. And I don't do like my stand-up's not one-liner jokes, but I can do them on there,
Yeah.
And that's kind of fun to be able to flex that muscle that you wouldn't normally get to do. And if they fall flat, they fall flat. And if they're good, they're good. So
I'm looking at your Blackula t-shirt.
Yes, yeah.
William Marshall. Fantastic actor, Shakespearean. He's on a classic Star Trek episode, M5.
Yes,
I loved William Marshall.
He was also
Blackula.
the king of cartoons on Pee-wee's Playhouse.
That's right.
The king. He's the one that made Blackula great. It
was a terrible.
But the whole storyline of him being an African prince against slavery, that he wrote that.
He did.
He made them film that and wrote that to give it that weight because it ends up being kind of a sad movie about an empathetic character.
Yeah.
And another great black actor that was on Star Trek who has my favorite voice ever, Percy Rodriguez.
Oh, Percy Rodriguez.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah. He's my all-time favorite voiceover guy.
Wow.
He used to write his own copy, and he did Jaws. That's what most people know him from, and all Terry Gilliam's movies.
Wow.
But he did all of New World and New Concord, which were pretty low rent in the 80s. And the copy he wrote and delivers. There's a movie called Crawl Space. With
Klaus Kinski?
Yes. Have you ever heard the story from the director of that?
No. But I've read about, I love Kinski and I've read his book.
Have you heard about where they wanted to kill him on the set of that?
Oh, I'm sure one of many sets.
David Schmoller, who made that movie, they were filming in Italy, and the Italian producers had a life insurance policy out on Klaus Kinski, and he was a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
And they came to him, and for real were like, can you kill Mr. Kinski?
Wow.
And he's like, what? And they're like, nah, this movie isn't no good. Lighter falls on him, whatever, we make it a money, you get... And he was like, I'm not gonna... But then he thought about it, because Kinski was so...
Awful.
So he did this short, it's a 10-minute short called Please Kill Mr. Kinski.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, it's amazing. But the trailer for that is Percy Rodriguez, and he goes, between the wall and hell... Crawl Space. It's just like these heavy. There's a movie called Neon Maniacs that's this awful movie shot in San Francisco. And
that whole genre I love.
Oh, I love it. He goes, in diabolical order. And it's just so, everything he does is, I'm like that guy. Popcorn is a favorite movie of mine, where it's shot in Jamaica. Jill Schoelen's in it, and Tom Villard. And and the guy, Tony, that's in all the Woody Allen movies, he's in Annie Hall, and he plays his buddy. But it's ahead of its time movie where they have a midnight movie screening of like these William Castle type movies, and a killer is kind of taking advantage of the gimmicks and killing people.
Wow.
And it's fun. But the Percy Rodriguez tagline is popcorn, buy a bag, go home in a box.
That's funny. It's like great.
Really, I love. But he's in one episode of Star Trek on screen, and he was the Lochnar in Heavy Metal. If you ever saw the animated Heavy Metal.
I love that. And John Candy was Den.
Yeah.
I'm Den.
Yeah, with an animated penis.
That's right.
And all SCTV people. Eugene Levy does voices, Joe Flaherty, because they did it up in Canada. Andrew Martin's in it, Catherine O'Hara.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
I still love that.
Were you a reader of heavy metal when you were?
I did. Yeah, I did start reading heavy metal eventually. Once I started smoking weed, I'm sure, and also I used to love this magazine called Raw, which was another art
Spiegelman.
Art Spiegelman, and Charles Burns did a lot of stuff in it. And then my favorite one was I think this was in heavy metal. My favorite character was this character named Ranxerox, and Ranxerox was He was in a dystopian future. He was like Frankenstein, but he was a fucking incredibly violent.
Yeah.
He was very sexual. He had an age-inappropriate girlfriend, and they did heroin, and they were tearing people apart. And the artwork was fantastic. Liberatore was the artist, and it was superb. Man.
Yeah. I mean,
great stuff.
That's an unmined area of... Material, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, look, I even liked. I liked Watchmen. I thought that was a really good movie. Sorry.
Here's the problem I have with Watchmen.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you agree, is they use the comic as storyboards.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
sounds right.
Yeah.
It looks right. It's theoretically adheres to the book.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem for me was Alan Moore was so smart at knowing about things you can do uniquely to comics with that combination of words and pictures that only work because of the way you read them.
All right.
So with the primary source stuff and the
what you're
black,
saying.
so you can't do a direct translation. You have to translate it to the medium.
I guess
and so
you're
that
right, yeah.
didn't quite work
Yeah.
in a movie for me. Like this is a nitpicky, nerdy thing, but
Yeah.
like the fact that in the world of Watchmen, there's only one superpowered being and he's horrifying, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Manhattan, and the rest of the people are just nutcases,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Is kind of the point to me.
Right.
And in the movie, because it looks cool, they're snapping people's heads off
That's
and
right.
backflips, and
That's right.
everyone knows kung fu. And I'm like, this is something different.
Yeah.
Like, but Rorschach was amazing.
And I'm sorry, Jackie Earle Haley is a fantastic actor.
Have you seen The Tick?
No, I haven't. Is he plays the
He plays the terror.
That's right.
And he's so good because he's horrifying and really funny.
He's a great actor. My
Yeah.
God, underused. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because people were like Bad News Bears.
I guess so.
Yeah, and he's great, in Watchmen. He's the best part of that.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite comic adaptation that you think really got it right?
Ooh, that's hard because I was a big Batman fan.
Yeah.
and ooh.
I loved Brave and the Bold and Justice League Unlimited. I thought those were some of the best Batman takes.
I don't know. It's I got to think about this.
Yeah, it's tough.
We're running out of time.
We
Ken,
are.
frankly.
I know.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
my God, man, I have to
you
go
have
to
things
Whole
do.
Foods.
It's
I gotta
true.
pick up
Fine.
lunch.
Well, I will let you go.
Oh wait, what about the TV guide?
Oh yeah,
thing,
what
man?
do we do? We go through there. Do you want to flip through? Let's see what we got.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
I know. We got on tangents. Let's see what strikes your fancy in there.
All right, so I'm looking at this TV guide with Streets of San Francisco on the cover. It's 74 or something like that. Yeah, 74. The week of February 16.
Sweeps week.
Oh, well, sweet treats. And we're looking at the Monday night movie, ABC, The Ten Commandments.
Oh, that's a weird time to show it. That's usually an Easter movie.
I guess so, but maybe they...
Show it twice.
Yeah, maybe there was... it's the International Matzah Festival.
Yes.
Maybe that's it.
It'd be weird when they'd show movies over 2 nights. Banachek.
Banachek.
Banachek is Robert
No.
Blake? No, Banachek's
No,
George Peppard.
George Peppard, you got it.
There's the famous George Peppard introduction he would say to everybody on sets.
No, what?
I'm George Peppard and I'm not a nice man.
Jesus
Speaking of
Christ.
dickheads, and he wouldn't be to people.
Yikes. I'm not a nice man. Let's
Take your
pick
whole
Thursday.
night. Thursday night. Let's
So
go
Thursday
8 o'clock.
night, here's Nanny and the Professor.
Okay.
I actually watched, like a stupid idiot, Nanny and the Professor. Nanny and the fucking Professor. And the song, in case anybody gives a shit, is... Since the day that Nanny came to stay with us, fantastic things keep happening. Is there really magic in the thing she does, or is love the only magic thing that Nanny brings? You know our Nanny showed us you can make the impossible happen. There's more. Nanny showed us that with a little bit of faith and faith and faith in love. There's more. Phoebe Figolilli is a silly name, and so many silly things keep happening. What is this magic thing about Nanny? Is it love, or is it magic?
There's no
Everybody
reason-
listening to this can blow their brains out now.
There's no reason to remember these things, but we do. Like
I was so impressionable.
Yeah.
It was...
I miss theme songs like the golden age
That
of
tell
theme
the whole
songs.
story.
Yeah. I mean, it's they stick with you though. They're the first music a lot of us are fans of.
Well, that's right, and also, I mean, when you look at Gilligan's Island is probably and Brady's Bunch, Brady's Bunch.
That's like the Dirty
drunk.
Dozen.
That's right, Brady. That would be great. Okay, revive the Brady Bunch. Make Brady this wrecking like Lee Marvin type. All right, you kids.
We're doing a heist.
We're doing a heist. The liquor store. Also, I got to cash a check in there, and then when I finish,
Bobby's the getaway driver, and Jan's our explosives expert.
oh my God. Okay, there's a show called Toma on. This is Friday.
Western?
Toma, Toma, with Tony Musante and Simon Oakland.
Tony
Of course, it's
Musante?
a cop show.
Here's something you have in common with Tony Musante.
I have in common with Tony Musante?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Both directed by Dario Argento. Tony Musante's in
hilarious.
The Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
Oh, the bird with the crystal plumage.
He's the main actor, and
Wow.
and Argento cast him because he watched Toma.
You're killing me.
You're
You're fucking killing
we
me.
go
It's
all
enough.
around. I know.
You're too expansive. I thought I'd have a good head for this, but you're
Yeah, it's not. It's done me no good. But that's a nice bookend.
It's a great
when we're
bookend.
here.
All right.
They needed an American name because Carl Malden is in Cat o' Nine Tails
Okay, now you're killing
with Dario
me now.
Argento.
That's right.
As the writing the crossword puzzles.
I just
And,
remember Suspiria, which
Yeah.
really, that really hurt me.
that's like a nightmare.
Really bothered me.
Yeah. I just watched the new 4K transfer of it. Oh, it's beautiful.
The room with the wire.
Oh yeah. The barbed wire room.
Forget it. That was not nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the whole Saw series in 1 minute of Suspiria.
There you go. That's
They're
right,
like,
that's right,
let's
yeah.
make a movie of just this.
Yeah,
Just
that's
this room full of barbed wire. Can we get his contract for this? Yeah, it's but there you go. Toma, a show you'd never seen?
I guess I saw it when I was a kid, but I was a Beretta guy.
Yeah.
I just loved Beretta.
Yeah, and that was Robert
Blake.
Robert Blake with his bird.
Antonio. No, not Antonio Fargas.
Antonio Fargas was Starsky and
that's
Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch. But there was another guy named
Yeah, it was-
Rooster.
yes, that was
Michael. I want to say Michael. Oh, damn it.
Yeah, I know.
And,
Could picture him and hear his voice.
And Tom Ewell.
Yep. We're missing those cop shows, those defective detective shows they used to call them.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess so. Trying to think. Well, look, the whole advent of the Law and Order series, which has so much to recommend it, and yet they're so formulaic. But
That's what people like, I
say
think.
they like it. It was. I did a couple of those SVU. And it was interesting. It was really interesting because there wasn't a lot of character.
Right.
But they wore their characters on their sleeves, and they were there.
Yeah.
But you didn't go in.
It's plot.
It was plot driven. And really interesting.
And those cop shows, the crime didn't really matter. It was
Yeah.
seeing how they
That's right.
did it. And there was, Kojak, Banachek, Mannix, Beretta, Rockford Files.
Rockford Files, that's right.
Even the Night Stalker kind of falls into
they're
that category.
character-driven, that's right.
And yeah, I don't know why we don't have that now. Like I feel like people would watch that.
I guess I'm trying to think because I don't watch a lot of TV. There
Yeah.
must be something on that kind of reflects that.
It's
more
sort of
character-driven thing,
ensembles.
Yeah.
Bored to Death was kind of like that
I
a
used
little
to
bit.
love Bored to Death.
Yeah.
God, that
it was great. Yeah.
Oh.
And dancing was great on that.
Oh
Yeah.
God, there's nothing better than Ted Danson High.
Yeah, he's
Fantastic.
fantastic. And I love The Good Place, and I watched that because he was in
I
it.
don't watch it.
He
Should I watch it?
You should.
The great Megan Amram.
Yes.
Writes on that show.
Yes.
I don't watch it.
So I had Ted on.
Okay.
And he was just filming it, and he couldn't stop saying enough good things
Wow.
about the show. And he was like, "It's maybe the best show I've done. Like the
Wow.
writers are great." And so I was like, "Oh, I gotta watch this," and it's real good.
All right, I'm gonna watch it because I was turned off. I was like, "Oh, show about heaven." Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
like I saw Defending Your Life.
That's
I don't
right.
need this. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's
I'm
got
gonna-
it's got its own take.
I'm gonna watch
Yeah,
now.
and dancing's great. So you're leaving with homework.
Kristen Bell, of course. Okay.
Yeah, the cast is
all right,
great.
I'll watch. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
My
you doing
friend,
this.
it was a lovely time, but
Yes.
I've got to get back to the world.
I understand.
Real world.
I understand.
Hope you don't mind.
No, it's fine. You'll go through the decontamination shower.
I'm going
and go back to the real world.
That's right. I'm gonna check for ticks and
Yep.
get back out there.
Yep. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Welcome.
Oh, baby, I see you in my TV set. Yeah, baby, I see you in my TV set. I cut your head off and put it in my TV set.
There you go, Steven Weber. How great is he? Once again, that episode was all thanks to you for listening, but also for the people who contribute to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/TV Guidance Counselor, because that is the money that I utilize to go out to Los Angeles and get some of these episodes with people who live in Los Angeles. I am Boston based, so I am at the mercy of who I have access to and who comes through town. And sometimes it's a bit of a drought. So it's nice to be able to go out to Los Angeles and collect these episodes with great people like Steven Weber. So thanks again to him. He is amazing, and I am still in awe that I got to sit down and talk to him. If you have other guests that you'd like me to try to get on the show, please email me at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or at ken@icanread.com. icanread.com, of course, being my stand-up comedy page where you can see my schedule, you can buy my albums, you can buy TV Guidance Counselor merchandise, you can see upcoming TV Guidance Counselor live events. We'll be doing New York Podfest in April. I believe it's the 8th in the afternoon. So if you're in New York City in April, please come by. I'll have more news on that later with what amazing guest I have for that. Or you can go to our Facebook page, just search TV Guidance Counselor, or we are at TV Guidance on Twitter and Instagram. As always, I am Ken Reed. We have a brand new episode each and every Wednesday, so make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you found it. If you like the show and you have a minute, please rate and review it. Totally not necessary. I also just made a weird fart noise with my hands. I swear to God, it was my hands. I don't know if you even heard it, and now I've made it. Now you're going to go back and listen, and it was my... Anyway, I should go now. So we'll see you again next time on a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
Apparently there was a dragon in the sky, which might have been a spaceship. We talking about a dragon with a V.